What's up, everybody? This is DNN, the Movie Men. I'm Dan Sasala.
And I'm Nate Thomas, and this is our review for A Quiet Place. So A Quiet Place is basically about a family who lives in a post-apocalyptic world in which they have to be completely silent because there are these monsters out there that will hunt them based on any type of sound that they make and will not quit until they find that person.
So in our previous videos, we basically have had the same liking of the movies that we've had so far. Like Red Sparrow, we both had our issues with it, but we also liked it fairly equally. But this movie's kind of different because coming out of the theater, we both had very different opinions on this movie.
So I came out of this movie absolutely loving it. I thought it was a really new and unique take on the stereotypical monster film, and I thought that made it really interesting for me.
I actually came out of this movie with a little bit of a less proud version of his opinion on it. For me, there was a lot more blatant problems based on like the story structure and how the characters were presented and some of the character relationships in the film. But as an overall movie, this movie was very entertaining to me. It's a new version of the classic monster film that we've seen many times, like in the Alien movies, in a lot of the like Cloverfield movies that have been released. It's kind of like that, but it adds a little bit newer spin with essentially being almost a silent film. It kind of goes back to the silent days of Hollywood, and when you go back to that kind of filmmaking, it's refreshing and something new to the classic horror cliche movie, and I think it was really well done for this film.
Yeah, the sound of this movie was great. Since the movie didn't really have a lot of dialogue, it was heavily reliant on its sound, and I wouldn't be surprised if it won an Oscar for sound editing or sound mixing, honestly. At certain points in the movie, I found myself not wanting to reach into the popcorn bowl and grab some popcorn because you could feel the intensity and you didn't want to make a sound because it felt like you would disturb the movie in a sense and like almost kill them if you were to make any sound at all.
Yeah, and building off of this, like it hit me especially hard at the beginning of the movie because typically when you go to a horror movie, it's kind of just a lame popcorn movie that you are just there to enjoy and get scared. But at the beginning of this movie, it was almost unsettling for me to not eat the popcorn because I'm so used to this shoving it in all in my mouth. But with this, it felt really eerie because I couldn't do what I wanted to. And when I feel what the characters feel in the movie, that's good filmmaking because you feel what the characters feel, and that's major props to John Krasinski's directing in this movie because you actually do feel what he wants you to feel in this film.
He did a really great job at directing the cast to show such great emotion like fear and desperation, especially with having very little dialogue to go off of. And I really wish he wanted to direct more movies because this showed that he can pretty much direct anything.
Yeah, and he's directed a few episodes of The Office that are definitely comedy based, but him directing such a thriller movie that's completely different than what The Office is really shows that he is an upcoming director in Hollywood, which is unfortunate because he did say that he doesn't want to direct any more movies.
Yeah, I thought John Krasinski did a great job at directing the kids especially because it's so hard to find kids that can show all this emotion in the film. And more often than not, you're able to tell in the movies when these kids are inexperienced and stuff because you just notice these little tiny details, but these kids did fantastic. You felt every single moment that they're in. One thing that I really liked in the movies were the monsters. They were scary. I mean, I wasn't scared in the movie, but they actually looked scary. They weren't the typical movie monster where it's just a whole bunch of saliva and just weird body markings and stuff like that. But they also had different characteristics that ultimately added to the movie and made it really interesting for me and definitely separated it from the stereotypical monsters.
And I kind of want to build off this because for me, this is where some of my problems come from in the movie. This movie definitely heavily relies upon the monsters needing to hear them and sneaking around, and that's where the suspense comes in the movie. But the fact that probably this movie only had about 6 or 7 jump scares and maybe 1 or 2 of those actually come from a monster, that's where I had a problem. The jump scares they weren't effective, and that's why we don't consider this film a horror film. The monsters were basically the expected monsters in a movie, at least in my eyes. They did have the unique aspect of needing to hear, but for me, the monster scenes where it's supposed to be thrilling and scary, it didn't do a whole lot for me because I've seen the scenes before in Alien or in Cloverfield Lane or in any other monster movie before. That's where the suspense comes in. Because I've seen it before, it wasn't done any different enough for me to consider it to be a great aspect of the movie.
So, if you can't tell by now, this is the part of the movie where Dan's gonna tell you pretty much everything that he doesn't like about the movie. So, take it away.
Alright, so the biggest thing for me in this movie that I didn't like is the fact that it feels like a long second act of a movie, or even it can be considered a long climax of the movie.
Which I don't understand.
The climax, if you look at the film like Alien, for instance, the climax of Alien is Sigourney Weaver's character going through a spaceship with the monster sneaking around and getting like really close into her face, and that's essentially what this entire movie is. The characters start in the exact same state as which they finish the movie, except for a couple of spoilerish type things. There's basically no character development at all throughout this movie, and so that's one thing that leads me towards it being more of a third act rather than a second act, because second acts of movies are typically where the characters develop more and relationships are established. But for me, the relationships that are established in this movie do not play a big enough factor for me, and it reminded me a lot of Dunkirk. Dunkirk did not have any characterization at all, and so you really didn't care about those characters, and it was more about the event, and that's where I felt like this movie was going towards. It was more about me watching a movie about people just surviving, and I really didn't care a whole lot about the characters at all, whether they lived or died, and that's ultimately where the movies fall short for me. I like movies that have strong characters that I can relate with and I actually care about whether they live or die, especially in a horror/thriller film like this. If you don't care about the characters dying or living, then the thrill and the suspense won't be there because you don't care that they're gonna die and you don't get to be put in that situation. However, what I do give credit for this film is the fact that with the sound and all like the little sound effects that they use, you do feel like you are immersed in the film. Exactly, we go back to the popcorn example. We didn't want to eat the popcorn because we felt like we were immersed in the movie for that short little time, but as soon as we see more of the monsters go throughout this movie, the scenes get a little bit more repetitive and more and more and more. There's one scene in particular where I winced because it was very cringy for me to watch because of something that happens. It was a very good scene. I think you know the stairs.
Okay.
He knows what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But that was the one part of the movie where I really felt like interesting because I'm like, this is gonna happen, and what happened, it was really, really good. There are moments like that in the movie, but overall, the scenes are very repetitive, and the exact same thing happens again. The monsters come, they hide, monsters get really close, they go away because of another noise. That's essentially the entire movie.
But honestly, unless you're a film major like Dan, you're not gonna notice these things. I didn't notice them, his girlfriend didn't notice them, my girlfriend didn't notice them. You're not gonna notice them unless you're a film major. So if you're just the average moviegoer, you're gonna love the film. You're not gonna see these things that he's pointing out. Actually, now you might though, because he pointed it out. Because I didn't. All right, once he pointed them out, I noticed it. But when you're watching the movie, you don't think about this stuff until after. Honestly.
Yeah, and building off of that, I do recommend this movie for everyone to go see because it is such an interesting aspect to a horror and thriller franchise because we haven't seen anything like this before, which is ultimately why I give this movie a 3.6 out of 5 stars because it is something new, but the drawbacks are it does feel a little long even though it is only about an hour and a half long.
And I give the movie a 4.5 out of 5. I really liked the length of the movie. I actually thought it could have been longer. And I really like the characters, and I like the way they relate to each other. So I personally really recommend the movie.
So those are our thoughts on A Quiet Place. If you guys like this video, please hit that thumbs up down below. And also, if you guys want to see a spoiler review for this film, please leave a comment down below to let us know.
And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome movie reviews.